Folsom prison. It holds at the present time 1,800 men. One of them is Timothy Leary. He was brought here after 4 months in solitary confinement at California Men's Colony in San Luis Obispo. Usually at this time, I would be going in to visit him. I'm allowed to see him 4 times a month. Today, instead, the cameras are going to be going in. This time, since his exile and his imprisonment, he's going to be allowed to speak. For those of you who know him, he's relaxed and he looks well. But behind the camera sits the warden, the assistant warden, and probably the captain of the guard. I am Joanna Leary, and I'd like to see him out of here as quick as possible. It's a long way from Harvard and West Point to Folsom State Prison.
Okay. Since we're going to be sitting here and chatting for a little while, first I think what I'd like to know is who is this man who has the name Timothy Leary? Who is Timothy Leary? Who is he as a person?
I'm a philosopher. I'm a psychologist who has been studying the nervous system for the last 30 years. I've written 10 books and hundreds of articles. I probably know as much or more about how the nervous system works, the far galactic outposts of awareness and the range of the human experience as any scientist around.
You also happen to be a person in prison.
Well, yes, I'm in prison, and that may seem odd, a philosopher in prison, but I have to say this about my profession. The best philosophers often end up in prison. If you're a good baseball player, you end up in the major leagues. If you're a really successful politician, you end up in Washington, I'm sorry to say. If you're really a good philosopher, if you're coming out with new ideas about the 7 great destiny questions that are going to rattle the walls of the social institution, most of the men that I model myself after have been lucky if they got away with just being in prison for their ideas.
As far as the general public's concerned, you're probably best known for your views on drugs. When did you really get started working with drugs?
Starting in 1960 at Harvard University.
And what role? How?
Well, for many years before that, as a psychologist and once studying the nervous system, knowing that the nervous system is the key to all human knowledge, I've been looking for instruments it's like microscopes, to see how the mind and nervous system works. And in the 1960s, as we all know very well, drugs came along as modes of expanding consciousness, just like telescopes and microscopes. The nervous system is a biochemical structure, and drugs are the fuels or the instruments, just like tractors and jet engines expand our muscles and our legs and that sort of thing. If you're going to study the nervous system, drugs are one of the major tools.
You were looking at it from a research view. Did you ever go away from that view, or every time that you worked with drugs, were you looking at it from research?
Well, the philosopher is looking not just at the narrow research aspects, but for the implications. The great questions are, where did we come from, where are we going, we're on this planet, this spaceship Earth, how are we going to get along with each other, how can we use our heads? So that I've always been interested in finding ways of using our nervous system as an instrument to answer the basic questions of life. I think any scientist who really gets to the frontier of his science gets to these basic questions, gets kind of mystical, gets philosophic, it's inevitable, and I've accepted that responsibility. I think we need, at this time, a new philosophy. We've run out of the great navigational ideas of how we're going to get the great ship moving in the right direction.
10 years ago, you did have a philosophy and a hallucinogenic revolution. What were you really advocating then?
Well, my main message is use your head. Specifically, learn how to use your nervous system. It's this, for the last 15 years, I've been studying my own nervous system. I've gotten to use my own nervous system the way Leeuwenhoek and the first men that got the microscope, or Galileo, the first guy that got the telescope. It takes years to learn how to focus it and dial it and tune it. I know that the nervous system is a computer. We can program it in many different directions. It's like a series of motion picture or television cameras. We can focus it and turn it around on different objects. It's electronic, it's electric. We can dial it and tune it. It's there to be used. And the challenge of the human race right now, I call it the neurological age we're going into. We've got to learn how to use our head.
Are you ahead of your time? Is that why you haven't been accepted totally yet? Are you too far ahead of?
Yes, I'm in a kind of a time warp. I definitely am ahead of it. Now, there's a question whether I may be off in the right direction, and perhaps the great center movement of society and science won't follow me. These are the risks that the far-out scientist takes. But I have a certain empirical experimental proof that I'm not entirely wrong, because most everything that I said in 1962, 63, my testimony before Senate committees about how we could avoid a drug in this country, in those days I was almost alone as a voice saying this is going to happen and beware, don't let it happen. And I was considered pretty radical, for example, saying that marijuana should not be criminalized, that LSD should be turned over to the government to be treated like fissionable material, like atomic. In the subsequent years, most of my prophecies have come true, and many very conservative organs like the American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Bar Association, even William Buckley, the conservative writer and television star, they're all coming around to positions that I was considered radical in espousing in the 1960s.
I believe you said 10 years ago that you wanted to change the spiritual level of the United States. Mm-hmm. Did you think of yourself as a drug messiah back in those days? You started your own church?
Well, if you hadn't asked me about drugs today, I wouldn't have brought it up. I'd talk about the nervous system. I'd talk about how we can use our knowledge to make this country a better place. I'd talk about how to reduce crime and that sort of thing. I want to point out that you're the one that's asking a question about drugs. Now, I know I have to answer a question about drugs because I've been labeled, as we say in prison, that's on my jacket. I have no more to do with drugs than Einstein has to do with the atomic bomb.
Now.
All the way through.
You never did 10 years ago.
Well, when I was lecturing, if you read my books, less than 10% of any book I've ever written, or 10 or 50% of any lecture I've ever given, is on drugs. And usually the drug question came up in the question and answer periods afterwards. Now, when Albert Einstein got to the particular heaven or Folsom prison hell, wherever his destiny led him, and he began talking about the equations of space-time and the relativity theory, I know that there's a reporter or a television man saying, yeah, Albert, but what about the atomic bomb? And he'll say, yeah, it's true that there were those crazy mixed-up kids got a hold of that atomic bomb on the basis of my theories and blew up Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So I have to take the responsibility for drugs as being one part of the philosophy that I've been teaching and studying and working on.
Are you saying 10 years ago that the news media just totally blew out of proportion what you were actually trying to achieve? Did you not advocate LSD?
No, I never advocated drugs. I defended drugs, different drugs, against unscientific charges. But as soon as you start saying marijuana is not a killer drug, you become an advocate.
In the people's mind.
Yeah, as I look in this camera and realize that people are going to be watching this program, I think it's safe to say that maybe a third of the audience generally likes me. They think I'm a philosopher in prison for my ideas, and they don't want me in prison. But I think there's another third that really dislikes me intensely and thinks that I've led the young people astray. There's another third probably that couldn't care less. That you're busy enough with your own lives that my debate with the United States government is no concern of yours. There's one thing that's true of almost everyone involved in these debates. They don't really know what I'd be saying. I think that very few people who are watching this program have read my books. Now we know how the media labels people, how they label Eagleton, how they label Muskie. It's the great sensation game. And it's very hard once they lay a label on you that way to fight back.
When was it that various local and government officials started putting pressure on you because of the views that were made known by the news media on drugs and so on?
Well, I don't know how many Americans know this, but I have the honor of being the person that started G. Gordon Liddy on his meteoric career. As much as anyone in this country, I put Gordon Liddy in the White House.
He was out after you, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was an assistant DA near Millbrook, New York, where I had a scientific center where we were studying consciousness. And Gordon was a very ambitious, now, of course, there are millions of people kind of going along on his trip. But in those days, he was The first time that I was harassed by the law was on a Saturday night at midnight. I was in my bedroom with my wife, and I was talking to my son, and the door banged open, and in came G. Gordon Liddy with 24 armed and booted sheriffs.
Warrant? Do you have a warrant in hand?
Yeah, but the warrant was they found no marijuana. The warrant was thrown out. They did confiscate a little plant that we had on peat moss, which was a geranium. But Gordon Liddy then ran for Congress on the basis that he had driven me out of the county, and from there he went to White House as a drug expert. And how did Gordon Liddy get to be a drug expert? Because he had fought Timothy Leary. This has been well known. It's been testified to recently. And that was 1966. And since then, I've been in continual... I know exactly how that system works. So your phone's being bugged, being harassed, and so forth. They tried it out on me before they tried it out on Senator Muskie and Senator McGovern.
If I recall, you've recently filed a suit to close Folsom.
Yes, with the help of some prisoners. There's a small group of prisoners here who are attempting to set up an educational program. It's called Probe. They're trying to get it authorized, and they helped me. This is a brief filed and written by called Jailhouse Lawyers. We want to close the prisons because they set up a condition of slavery, involuntary servitude, and the brief spells out how we can deal with the prisoner problem without caging men in a way that's very unconstitutional. And we hope to do it, of course, very legally and with the cooperation of the prison guards administration. There's something in this for everybody. One thing, I see the United States and the human situation like a nervous system. We're all in touch. I think the problem has been that we've gotten out of touch with each other. We've got to use technology to get into close communication, so that everything we're doing here now is legal. It's with the knowledge of the prison authorities. We want to bring them in. We want to raise their salaries. We want to give them compensation adequate to their problem, because they're facing the crucial problem of how to change men's minds and solve crimes. But we're not against anyone.
Certainly 10 years ago, you were giving advice to people. What advice would you give young people today?
Well, you know, I've been off the air for 3.5 years, and I haven't been giving any advice. I've been letting other people take over to see how good the advice is that they could pass on. My main advice to everyone is we've got to learn how to use our heads. We've got to realize that the nervous system can be used as an instrument to help us understand why we're here and where we're going. I think we've got to change. We'd like to see the United States move into its third century with the same spirit we had 200 years ago, a spirit of novelty, of there's something great and imaginative and freeing, so that we can have the pride that Americans used to feel. Now, as I look around since I've been back, I don't see that Mr. Nixon or the Democrats have a program that's going to lead us into the third century with this vigor that we need. We'll limp or crawl or kind of stagger into the third century, which I think is a tragedy. So I don't have any advice for anyone. I'm just simply saying that we're going to be broadcasting our ideas of hope and of confidence and of courage. And we don't say we're right, but God knows we're about ready for a new philosophy. It's going to come.
You say you aren't giving advice. Would you give advice on the use of drugs nowadays?
Yeah, I should do that. And I'll look right into the eyes of everyone that's watching this program and say that I don't urge you to take LSD in particular. LSD is the most powerful substance that the human being has ever developed for influencing the mind. I've used the comparison of nuclear energy or a fissionable material. I think that in the right hands and scientific and disciplined and hopeful people, it will bring about changes. But I don't want anyone to listen to this broadcast to get any other message that I'm telling you, stay away from LSD. In the first place, 99% of what's called LSD is LSD. And 99% of the things that are said about LSD are totally lies or fabrications. The whole thing is so confused now that I'll flatly make that statement.
You also said in the past that you are afraid of heroin. You don't like heroin.
Personally, I don't like heroin at all. It's a down trip, it's an escape trip, and although I'm an escape artist, I like to escape to life, not escape from life. Um, I think that heroin addiction is like diabetes, or it's like epilepsy. There are certain people that just physiologically and psychologically are so wired up that they're going to be attracted to this mode of escape. And heroin addicts, there probably would be 60 or 100,000 if we kept the money thing out of it. Could be handled by physical prescriptions by doctors, just the way diabetics now use insulin. Well, if you passed a law against insulin, immediately the price of insulin would go up, like the price of heroin, and you'd have diabetics going around robbing and stealing to get their fix. But for me, heroin is no trick.
You're sitting here in prison. What are you doing productively? What are you doing to keep yourself alert?
Well, I have no trouble keeping myself alert. There's plenty to do here. The main thing I'm doing is taking advantage of this opportunity to study society from this very interesting vantage point. I'm talking to prisoners, I'm listening to them, I'm doing some writing. I do about 2 hours of physical yoga every day. There's no problem. This is where it's happening, as I said before. It's a microcosm. You've got all the raw essence of human society here. This is where you can really see it coming down. It's a rare experience. It's nothing that I want to make a career of, but it's my ambition to really liberate the world. Why not? I mean, why settle for anything less? And I have a sense of humor about it. I know the odds are against me, but we only have a few years here. Let's try to leave this spaceship a better place. And all the models and all the philosophers and all the men that I think have really liberated humanity have all done their time on the outside. I want to get back in. I think I belong in American society. I think that a society that imprisons its philosophers is playing with very bad magic. You just can't imprison ideas.
You've been arrested a number of times for possession of marijuana. Were any of those legitimate?
No, as a matter of fact, I've never been legitimately arrested. I'm in prison now because one evening I was in a parked car and a policeman came up to the car and opened the door against my wishes, made a pass of the ashtray and said, "You're under arrest for," I said, "For what?" He said, "For marijuana." I said, "What marijuana?" He reached in his pocket. He pulled out 2 joints that I'd never seen before, half joints, and said, "You're under arrest." A year later, an Orange County, Orange County jury believed the policeman's story and found me guilty of possession of marijuana. Now then the judge, instead of giving me bail, as I was entitled to for appeal, held up a book that I had been writing and said, "Your ideas are dangerous, and we're not going to give you bail, and we'll put you in prison to keep you quiet." Now, I'm not complaining, because I think I should have been shut up then. I've been around the United States for 10 years talking and spreading my message, and I think it's good in a public life to chance to lay back and to see what the opposition is going to do. As a matter of fact, when I was arrested, I was running for governor of California, and I published position papers on how to gradually eliminate taxes, how to eliminate crime, how to eliminate the drug abuse problem, and so forth. I thought I'd lay back for a couple of years and see how well the other side was going to do. But last January in Afghanistan, the American government agents, they're part of that same Leary Narcotics Bureau group, stole my passport illegally, kidnapped me.
Valid passport?
It was a valid passport on the sovereign territory of Afghanistan, kidnapped me, put me in a plane, brought me back, and now I'm in Folsom prison, and I'm broadcasting again. Now, I didn't want to come back. I was happy over there. I was consulting with other governments on how they could avoid the crime and the drug problem we have here. But now that I'm back, I am going to be broadcasting.
You say that that arrest was not a legitimate one. Let me rephrase that. Do you think the sentence was put on you extra tough because you are Tim Leary?
I don't think, first place, I don't think that anyone should go to prison for the possession of marijuana. So it's unfair for everybody. I don't think there's any question, though, that if another middle-aged, middle-class person was found with 2 of these in their pocket, they wouldn't be doing prison time. But I am Timothy Leary. I don't think it's so much my ideas, because there are a lot of people running around preaching new ideas. The reason I'm in prison is because my ideas were listened to by millions of people. They got a little too popular. That's my version of it.
Briefly, I know you took a number of pages in your newest book to explain how you broke out of prison, but briefly tell us how you did it. You had help?
I'd like to say telepathy, teleportation, magic. That was part of it. I went over a fence.
You had outside help?
I was helped after I got outside. Yeah.
Well, in your book you also had help. It was a long-range setup that helped you get out and so on. You were helped by the weatherman? One person who helped you break out was a young girl, codename of Kelly, and you say that she's the senator's daughter.
Yeah.
It was Senator Blank in the book. Is it to remain that way? Well-known senator?
Very well known.
Does the senator know?
Oh, sure.
Then you went on to Algiers. You lived over there with Eldridge Cleaver and his wife Kathleen. What do you think of Eldridge Cleaver as a man? His beliefs, his feelings. There was a big rift there after you had lived there for a while.
Yes, Eldridge Cleaver and I disagreed strongly on philosophy and on how to change the world. I believe that the revolution is a neurological revolution. It's a revolution of consciousness. I saw it more as a spiritual revolution. Eldridge, as you probably know, believed in a violent military revolution, and I felt that this was old-fashioned and would get easily wiped out and create bad vibrations where we wanted good vibrations.
Some people say that perhaps your use of LSD and other drugs, you might have destroyed some of your brain. Do you think that you've suffered any brain damage whatsoever?
Well, am I insane? Of course, that's a very tricky question for anyone to answer. I've lived through the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, and I think anyone who's still erect after those years has had his sanity tested. I'm 52 years old, facing the problems of maturity and getting old. I've been through a lot of rough time the last few years. My career has been ruined, and they took my credit card away at Harvard, and I've been harassed by the United States government pretty heavily. I've been in 4 prisons, all without committing any crime that I know of. I've been in solitary confinement for 4 months. In addition to all of these pressures, I probably pushed my nervous system as much as any human being living. I think I'm the strongest, sanest person around. Now, I'm not making any guarantees for the future, but, you know, there's something very ominous about this tendency to call anybody that you don't agree with insane. 100 years ago, they'd say you were possessed by the devil, or you were a heretic. 20 years ago, they'd say you were a communist. Now, the really sophisticated totalitarian method now is to say that someone that is a dissenter, that is against the society, is insane. In Russia now, very smooth. They take their philosophers and their dissenting poets, and they don't put them in Siberia anymore. They put them in an insane asylum. Now, maybe it is insane to be against what's happening in the United States today. Maybe it's insane to try to have hope that something can be done about it. So if that's insane, count me in. But otherwise, make up your own mind.
You're an optimist, a hope fiend.
Yeah, I've been called an irrepressible optimist. Now, the opposite of an irrepressible optimist is a repressive pessimist, and I think that's what's running the country today.
What do you think of your future? Do you think you're going to walk out of Folsom Prison a free man one day?
I think my future is very intimately connected with the future of this country. You just can't keep your philosophers in prison. If I am kept in prison, it's going to be a very bad symptom for freedom and for hope and for union.
Sitting here during the interview, I've noticed the symbol on your shirt. What is that for?
This is a very interesting symbol for some of us. This is a replica of the remnants of a living organism that was found on a meteorite that came from interstellar or extraplanetary space. This is proof that life exists somewhere off our planet. Now, we feel that this is the first contact with a higher intelligence, or somewhere out there there's another point of view. And we've taken this as a symbol of the new hope philosophy that we're talking about. Sometime in the fall, we're going to see in the sky a meteorite. Have you heard about it? It was discovered by a German astronomer. We call this light that's going to come into our solar system. If we see it in the daytime as well at night, we call it starseed, and it kind of ties in with the symbol that we're visitors on this planet Earth. We're not going to be here very long. We've got to get back in touch with the greater picture. And it's a symbol of unity and hope.
I would like to ask you briefly if you have a final comment.
I think I've said pretty much what I have to say. We're going to keep broadcasting. There'll be more messages, and be very glad to hear from anyone in the audience who'd like to keep this dialogue going. My partner and my mate, Joanna Leary, is going to be going to college campuses and radio programs and television programs. I've had 2 books that are published since I've been back. I apparently was wanted back here. I think there aren't very many philosophies of hope, freedom being broadcast. So, and let me try to shut me up. The people who have broadcast hope in this country in the last few years, many of them have been killed. I know it's a risky job, but I'm here and I'm going to keep broadcasting.